Hello everybody, my name is Matt Pierce, Learning and Video Ambassador. Welcome to the Visual Lounge, wherever it is that you are watching or you're listening to the podcast after the fact. Thank you so much for tuning in today. We are going to be talking about 7 sins of video creation. Now, these are not the deadly ones, even though the first thing you'll see when I put these up is probably says deadly, but they're not really deadly. It's just mistakes that I think a lot of video creators are making that we could avoid, and if we can avoid it, it will make better videos. So, we are going to dive in today. We're going to be monitoring chat, so if you got questions you want to ask about these as we go, please do so. And of course, we are so thankful for everybody listening in to the show because, we appreciate it and we hope that you get good information from what we're doing here. And, we're going to go just zoom right into these. So thank you guys again for being here. All right, so we're going to talk about the 7 sins. Of course, like I said, they're not deadly sins, but if you're creating a video for any length of time, you've probably made these mistakes. And if you are still making these mistakes, hopefully we'll provide some advice here. So out of curiosity, how many videos are you creating per month? Are you just doing something once a month? Are you doing it like every week? Are you making a video? Are you doing it like 7, 8, 9, 10 times a month? Just let me know in the chat because here's the thing I'm curious about. Is it something that you're doing often? Because if you're doing this often, you're probably much less likely to be, if you're doing these often, you're much less likely to make these mistakes. If you're doing it just infrequently, you're gonna probably be more likely to do it. So hopefully we can help you with that. The first one, so number 1, is not knowing what your equipment can do. So this happens a lot. A lot of people start making video, and the first thing they do is they pick up their phone or they get a DSLR camera and they just want to shoot something because that's the exciting part. It's exciting to make the videos. It's exciting to do something. But the thing is, you have to take time to learn what your equipment can do. And that could be lots of different things. That might not just be a camera. That could be your microphone. So if you've got like a Blue Yeti, like I've got in the background here, we see oftentimes people want to talk into it the wrong way. They think it's a top-down microphone. So if this water bottle was a microphone, they want to talk into it like this. But that's not the way the microphone works. So whatever equipment you have, you want to make sure you're doing that. You want to make sure that you're understanding, the ins and outs. Now, you don't have to be a master necessarily, but by understanding your equipment, you're going to have less problems in the long run. So for instance, one thing that happens to a lot of people if they're working with cameras is, especially like web cameras, is the focus. I've seen this numerous times now that their web camera, it wants to autofocus and it doesn't focus on their face. It just kind of focuses randomly and then they get a blurry picture. And so they're not sure how to fix that. And those are the types of things you want to pay attention to with whatever equipment that you have and that you're getting, because otherwise, you're going to find that you're going to have more problems and things aren't just going to work very well. So as you're getting to know what your equipment can do, it's not as perilous as this, right? It's not like you're walking on a precipice. You're not going to fall off a mountain and die. However, I have seen this, that people don't know their equipment very well, and I've done it. I've gone out and I've shot something and it just didn't work. For instance, in fact, I think I have it here. Nope. Yep, I've got it right here. I'm going to pull it on my desk. I have this digital audio recorder. It's a great little recorder, can hook a microphone into it, works really well. I was on a trip I was in Scotland, and I set up an interview with someone, and I recorded, got my camera set up, as it had a DSLR. It looked really great, it was awesome. It was in a soccer stadium there in Glasgow, or near Glasgow, actually in Paisley. And I had this for my audio because I wanted better audio. And it's big open space, but there's lots of kind of background noise. Well, I got this set up, I hit it, and instead of hitting record, I hit it twice, and it was paused. It was paused for the entire 20, 30-minute interview that I went through, which means I got great looking footage, but the audio was only what was picked up on the camera, which is secondary footage. And normally that, in some circumstances it might be okay, but it was awful. In this case, it wasn't workable. I couldn't save the footage, and I just felt terrible. Here I was, I couldn't recreate that interview. I couldn't just go back and say, can I have another 30 minutes of your time? And so knowing your equipment is super, super important. And it might sound like super obvious, but that's one of the things that I think why it's such a sin, right? Like, is because it is obvious that sometimes we just want to jump in, and sometimes we think we know white balance, we know focus, we know how to do all those things, but just make sure you're really knowing that you can do it under pressure. Because that's the other thing that will happen is you'll get under some kind of pressure and you'll be like, oh my gosh, what do I do? How do I fix this? How do I get to the next thing? Now, as you're getting to know your equipment, it's much like you're a mountain climber. If you're climbing a mountain, you want to know what your ropes can do, right? You want to know all the bits and pieces. You want to make sure that they're going to be the work the way you think they're going to work. And the other thing is, you might think it's cool to have lots more gear, because let's face it, who doesn't love more gear? I love having more gear. I've been looking at microphones. I'm thinking, man, if I got a different mic, would that be better? I've been thinking about like, well, what if we added a second camera? What would I shoot in here? How would I set this up? But again, if you don't know the gear, you don't know what's going on, more equipment isn't going to get you a better production. In fact, it's going to complicate the production and you're going to miss out. So let's take, for example, and just in this idea of getting to know some more gear, let me just switch back to my screen here. Let's look at, like, this is just an Apple phone, right? So it doesn't matter. This is just an example. If you're an Android person, I respect that. As we look at this, you can see, and I don't know if you guys can see it playing on your screen, but nope, doesn't look like it's going to play. However, in your device, there are settings. So let's just say you're just going to use your phone. You can go into settings and get to know things. For instance, in your camera settings on your smartphone, there are things probably like a grid, so that helps you shoot in thirds. There might be dimensions. There might be different aspects of that video that you can adjust based on the settings in your device. So just spend some time going through the menus, getting to know where things are, familiarize yourself. And if there's things that you're like, I don't know what that is, take some time to look it up. And you probably don't need to know every piece of menu on a Canon camera or a Sony camera, but knowing some of the basic ones are really going to help you out. Now, here's the other thing. If you're working with something like a smartphone, a device, you might find that there's other software or other pieces of media or things that can enhance what it does. For instance, this is a program called Filmic. We have no affiliation with them. I've just used them on my phone for shooting stuff, but I love their app. It's a paid app. It's about $15 to $20 depending on when you buy it, which I know for an app is a lot of money. But the reason I like this so much is because I have all these things I can do to make my normal smart device a little bit smarter. And that's the cool things about these. I can adjust the white balance, which my native app I don't think can do. I've got my grid. I've got some controls for zooming in and out. If you see here on the screen, you've got this highlight around this little toy dinosaur. That's showing me what's in focus. So I can actually set what's in focus with my smart device, which is, I don't think I can kind of tap and say like, oh, click on this and generally, but this gives me really much more precision. So again, apps, add-ons, things that you can do to enhance your device. If you got to learn about them, it will make your life a little bit better. I know, I reference a smartphone a lot. And the reason I do that is because it's so versatile, especially for newer filmmakers. You don't have to spend a lot of money. If you have a device, you've got something that is very capable of creating good-looking videos. And then you pair that with a tool like Camtasia on your desktop, and you can shoot and make almost any type of video that you need. I mean, there's so much that you can do with that. So, just think about it. What control do you want? What kind of things you do? And apps are a great way just to add on to that overall kind of sense of things. So let me go to a question again. And Jesse's watching today. She's helping us. She was a guest last week. You got to meet her. She's helping monitor chats, and I'm going to keep my eye open for any questions that we need to answer. But poll time. In the chat, let us know, what are the biggest challenges you're facing during video editing? So as you move from shooting to editing, what are the things that you find that's either difficult, challenging, you're just struggling with? You're like, oh man, it's not feeling, cohesive. It's not feeling fluid. It's not feeling, fill in the blank. What is it for you that you feel like is a big challenge? And I'm going to keep going, but I'll kind of keep an eye on the chat because we're going to talk about some of these things with video editing I think are problematic, because we're going to get to the second sin here. I got 7 of them. We'll get to the 7th one here. All right, so here we go. Number 2. Thinking you'll fix it in post. Number 2. If you're not familiar with this idea, post is as in post-production. So you've recorded your audio, your camera video, and then you go into like the editing phase. That's often referred to as post-production. And there's this myth, and you've heard it like on TV shows, at least I have, that's like, oh, we'll fix that in post. Don't worry about it, we'll fix it in post. The idea is that a lot of things we think, oh, it didn't go so well during recording, I can just make it better. And that is true. There are some things you can do, right? Like you can, oh, I said a wrong word, I can add a call out and, make sure it's clear what I'm talking about. That's easy enough. But there are so many things that are just not fixable, or you would have to have, super high-end tools, and there's all sorts of things. So this, not too long ago, I was shooting a video outside of work for my faith community, and I was doing some work, and it's a couple different videos, and I made a mistake. I forgot to choose the microphone input. I have microphone issues all the time, I guess. It's just me. And it was just one of the things I overlooked to switch the setting on it. And I was with someone of prominence. I was like, hey, we're going to record this. And they were awesome about it, but I messed up the microphone. And I couldn't go back and ask them and their family to re-record something. And so I had to fix it in post. And let me tell you, it wasn't great. There was a little bit I could do to clean up the audio. It was basically recording through my laptop versus a microphone, which you can imagine doesn't sound good. So get in your head that like, hey, not everything is fixable. You can't just go back and make audio that's noisy clear. And so what you'll want to be doing is kind of planning and thinking through like, okay, did we get these right? Did we get our audio right? Did we get all the footage that we needed? Did we, get the lighting so it was good enough? Like, what are the challenges that you're going to have? And start looking at those things, because you're not going to just be able to go into your video editor, as good as they might be, and fix it unless you're really, really good. And most of us as learning professionals, or you're working in documentation or marketing, that's not our expertise, right? We're not going to be color correctionists. We're not special effects people. We're not going to have those abilities. So it's always better if you can get it right during the shooting process to do it there than to try to fix it later. And it also just takes a lot of time and effort. I don't know about you, but most of my videos I don't have a lot of time to put into. I don't have weeks and weeks and months to fix them. I have a day or two then I need to move on. So, just like you're working through this process, let me give you some examples. Like say other examples of things that you might not be able to fix. If your audio is too loud, so you've got the microphone cranked up and it's just blowing out, or you're too close to the microphone. Maybe there's jarring sounds like, door slamming, thunder, something big booming, sneezes in the background. Those are hard to remove unless it's isolated incidents. Shaky camera footage. There are some tools that will allow you to edit that, but it's always better to have it stable if you can, unless you're going for a Blair Witch Project kind of thing. Overexposed camera footage, meaning there's too much light and things are getting washed out. You can't pull it back from that. If it's too dark, sometimes you can lighten up footage, but most of the times you can't. If you're not white balanced, your footage is going to look off a little bit, and then if you're doing multiple shoots and it's not consistent, it gets harder as well. If you've got something in your background that's maybe causing a distraction, I noticed early on someone said the lights in the background were flashing a little bit too much, so I changed it. So hopefully they're better for y'all. But you want to make sure you're paying attention to these things, because it's going to be hard. If I didn't want this microphone in the background here, way back here, that's going to be just tough. I'm not going to be able to digitally remove that. I mean, somebody probably can, but for me, probably not in my skill set. The other thing is if you've used the digital zoom on your camera and you've really zoomed in and it's all grainy, there is no FBI secret lab that's going to enhance your footage that I know of. That's a TV thing, right? Like your footage is grainy and doesn't look good. It's going to be grainy and not look good. That's kind of all there is to it. So that seems like a big list, right? Like it seems like we're about to be crushed by all the mistakes we could potentially make. But again, I think it's an awareness issue, and being aware of the things and having a mental checklist. And if it's not a mental checklist because you've got like, man, I can't remember all these things, create yourself a real checklist that's going to allow you to check for the things and the problems that you're typically experiencing. Like maybe it says, check microphone input. I needed that one. Check microphone levels. Okay, cool. Check lighting, check exposure, check white balance, check whatever these things are that you feel like, oh gosh, I'm going to forget to do that. It's just going to, it's a best practice to have that checklist, because if you have that checklist and you are thorough and you're not just like, oh, I don't really need it anymore, you are going to make sure you hit those things, and you're going to eliminate maybe not every single mistake, but a large majority of them that's going to make it so that you are more successful. And that way, when you get into editing, you can focus on the fun part of telling the story, getting your message across, doing that work, instead of wondering about, how am I going to fix this? What am I going to do? I can tell you with that example I shared about the audio recording, choosing the wrong microphone. I spent way more time, way more effort trying to fix it, trying people's solutions, trying things and in the end, it was this much better after all was said and done, which it was fine, I guess, but I was disappointed and I wasted a lot of time. If I just had selected the right microphone, would have been so much better. So just keep going through your list, and I've got some things I can share with you guys. I think we've got a checklist over in the TechSmith Academy you can check out, but I've got some other questions we can go through and just be thinking of some of those things. So, all right, let's look at the next thing here. Oh, we are on number 3 of 7. Got to get that focus here. There we go. 3 of 7. I like this one because it's something that I think it's, if you're newer to video and you're working with cameras, and we'll talk about screen stuff in here too, it's easy to overlook. It's like, well, just point your screen at the person and you're good. And that's not true. You need to frame your video, right? You need to be thinking about the framing. You need to be thinking about what's going to be seen. How is the person going to be seen? There are some guidelines we'll go through here that I think could be helpful. And let me just say, when I say guidelines, I do not mean hard and fast rules. That's a great thing about most video stuff that we're talking about, is like there are no firm rules. There's, people will tell you if it's good or not, but like audio, it's like it's got to sound good, but there's no real rules about like certain pieces of it. Like in framing, there's definitely not rules. There's just suggestions. So let's look at a couple of those. First of all is something called the rule of thirds. We've talked about the rule of thirds before in the live stream. It's been a while, but you can see here in this picture, there's this grid, right? You've got it horizontally and vertically grids. So it's broken into threes. Typically the rule of thirds, you would line it up so you've got some creative way of putting your subject in a third. Usually we like to see them on a third line. This one's off just a touch, but I think in terms of composition, it works really well. In terms of my shot here, I'm just actually going with a straight on between the 2/3 because it's me talking to you, and I've got like when I get the round circle here, or if I go to this view, I could kind of move over to be in a third, and that's maybe a little bit more interesting. Like I said, there's not a hard rule here. You have to kind of look at what you're doing, but generally thirds are good when you're shooting people. That also leaves you space. So especially if I was going to do like a green screen here, maybe an overlay, I could do that. That would give me space to do that. So think about what you're going to shoot. What's the purpose? What is it that you want to convey to your audience? The other thing that might be part of framing is your camera angle. Is it straight on? Is it up looking down a little bit? Is it coming from a lower? Are you trying to, those all have meaning. And we're not going to go into all the meaning about those, but think about framing your camera so that you can decide what is it that you're sharing with people? What is it that you want to help people to do? Let me go back to my screen here. We're going to look at a couple of videos, and I hope this works because I hope the sound comes through, and I think it will. Let me just check my settings here. I think we're good. I want you to look at this as we watch it and think about, what does the framing indicate? I mean, there's the thirds, but there's also distance, things like that. So let's go ahead and check it out.
Do you have your scripts?
I'm just pitching the product, so I'm going to wing it. It'll be fine.
All right. Action.
Hi, so I'm here today, and I want to tell you a little bit about our new product. And
you've probably seen this. As soon as someone gets on camera, they don't know what to say. they're treading water, floundering. It's awkward. Unscripted takes waste time, effort, and are painful to watch.
So it's going to be great for you or maybe someone you know.
A script is a lifeline for anyone on camera to be more confident and articulate. You're gonna need this. Okay, well, sorry about the text that's on the screen there. Not a big deal. Hopefully you got the gist of it. So notice that our speaker there, she's gonna go on camera without a script. This is part of one of our Academy videos about teaching script writing. And notice that she gets kind of further and further away, but also that we're putting her in a position of being much more floundering and struggling, yet the presenter, which happens to be me, is centered much more of a position of authority, saying like, hey, this is something that you should be aware of. The story that you're telling alone, had we not had audio during that, you still might get some of the understanding that comes from just looking at the distance of the person on camera, where they're at on the camera, kind of in the position. And it does a lot to kind of share this notion and feeling. You could probably set up the same scene in many different ways with many different ideas of how that would look, and maybe convey the same stuff. But if it was all centered, nice and tight, close, it might not feel quite right. It's going to look very different. So definitely your framing can do a lot. We're going to look at another one, because I think it's good to look at a couple things here. So,
do you have your scripts?
Oops, let me see if I can get to the next slide.
Do you have your scripts?
There we go. So we're going to take a look at another one. Let's see what this one shows us.
Hi, everyone.
Actually, let's see if I can.
Hi, everyone.
There we go.
We can't cover everything in every video, but we wanted to make sure we take some time to walk you through some different microphones. So I have 4 different types of microphones. I want to talk about their placement and a few tips to use them better. So let's get started. The first microphone we're going to talk about is just a very generic set of headphones.
Okay. Very simple one, right? That's part of the TechSmith Academy. It's more of a, like, let's talk about microphones. You can tell it's a very different style video. But what we did with framing is there's, again, the centered kind of person of authority saying, here's some things you need to know. But then we cut to this wider shot that's going to pan around. It just gives it some motion and movement, but you still get the sense. You get the sense of environment. You get the sense of kind of the space that the person's in. You get the sense of like you're there with them rather than just kind of watching them. And so, is it perfect? No. But is it give a good indicator of some things that you could be thinking about when you're framing your video? Absolutely. In this case, in particular, in that second shot, and let me just kind of pull it up here, you also get a sense of like on the desk, there are other items to be talking about. So as I, pick up this one, you can see probably like, oh, he's going to go through all these different microphones. And so that's just one thing. It's a small thing to think about. Like it's very nuanced. It doesn't probably say a ton to your viewers, but I definitely think that it's worth taking a look at and thinking about how you're framing that up for your audience. Now let's change gears a little bit here because framing, we've been talking a lot about camera stuff. Screencasts. TechSmith, we're all about screencasts, and there is framing in screencasts. A lot of times, people will do what you see here on the screen, right? It will look like, let me change back to my screen here. It will look like this. And so you'll have something that is lower, got the third grids, but you're seeing everything. You're seeing literally the entire screen. That is great for context. However, that might not be everything that you need to do because, again, it doesn't really give me a sense of where to look. It doesn't lead my eye. And there's things you can do. You could put an arrow. You could put your mouse cursor large and moving. But I think something like this frame actually helps me to orient to where I am. So if I'm supposed to be looking on the Home tab in Microsoft Word, and I'm supposed to be looking at maybe this no indent formatting, I don't know. It's much clearer, at least already, about like narrowing down where my site should be. And you might use both, right? Like you might push into this. So like when I say push in, I mean zoom. You might start with like a quick, hey, here's Microsoft Word. And now we're going to focus on these editing in Word functions or whatever it might be. So I think it's just a matter of thinking about when you're doing screencasts. How can you use your framing to really lead your viewer to understanding and your eyes? So I do want to make sure, just as a reminder, we are going to take some questions. I'm watching Jesse's sharing some with me. I want to make sure I'll get to some of those here in a minute. But just so you're aware, if you got questions, because we are coming up on Screencasts, on number 4. Can't speak today. I've been on vacation for a few days, except for today. So it's coming back to this nice and wild, guys. Number 4, not lighting your videos. This is a big one. Again, very camera-centric, I think, which is okay because I know a lot of people are doing camera videos. But if you ever made a video in low lighting, you know it's problematic, right? It's dark, it might be grainy. I've talked a lot about lighting over time here at TechSmith, but I've got 2 lights here. I actually recently turned them down. It gives me a little bit less bright look. You want to make sure you got some light. You can do practical lighting behind you if that makes sense. You know, if all you got is a window, I could open my window and flood things in here. But you want to make sure you're adding some lighting if you can, or, you know, whether, again, that could be natural lighting or it could be lighting that you've gone out and purchased, because it's just going to make a better video. Your camera is going to appreciate that lighting. So, the challenges are always if you have not enough lighting. What can you do? Well, again, your video is going to suffer, but what you want to do is, again, look, can you add any type of light? It might be your overhead lights, and if that doesn't look good, you can buy cheap lights that are like $10 for the cans and put a light bulb in them. That's going to be better than nothing if you can afford, you know, $100. There's lots of Amazon light kits, or kits on Amazon, I should say, that are going to set up. You might not have room. I've got 2 flat panels. They are pretty small in terms of footprint, and so they kind of just nestle in around my desk. And, you know, $250. That's a lot. I understand, but that's going to make a big difference so that I know I'm always going to have enough light. But the thing is, once you start adding lighting, the other challenge is going to be, let me go back here, too much light. And I'm gonna do this live, so let's open up some window blinds. All of a sudden it changes the dynamic of the room a little bit, which might not be bad. You might like this kind of more bright lit side, but it's not, to me, it's not as even. It's maybe a little bit more distracting, so I'm gonna close that back up. And so as you're looking at your lighting, too much light can really be problematic. You're gonna get kind of that white washed out, oversaturated in terms of light brightness, and you can't recover from that. So if you have too much light, blinds can be really helpful if it's a natural light, or you can put on your lights that you have there's diffusion paper, which is basically, imagine like a wax paper. It's kind of frosted glass or something like that. If you put that over, I've got some on mine now. It's just going to make the light a lot more even. A great example of this, if you've ever been to a hotel room or some kind of room, or you've seen a mirror, my daughter actually has one of these. It's a makeup mirror, and on the mirror it's got a light, and on it it looks like it's got a white frost around it. The reason those mirrors have that is because you need light to see close up on your skin if you're doing makeup or skincare or whatever. But the reason it's frosted is because it's going to give a softer light, which is really good. If you're worried about wrinkles, it's going to make your skin look a lot smoother and cleaner, which is an added benefit. So, you know, what can you do? Well, you're going to look good. You want to look good on camera, and you want your talent, if you're not on camera, you want them to look good. So definitely check that out here. Let me just keep going here a little bit more, and I see I got some questions we're going to ask. So here's an example of lighting. This is from another TechSmith Academy video that we did. This is more of a classic noir. If you think the setup for the video is actually like a Twilight Zone, and so you can see that it's a little darker. Of course, it's in black and white. That was a choice. But you can see I've got a little bit more shadow on one side of my face. This is not a classic 3-point lighting style. It's a little bit different, but you can see it still looks pretty good. You got the kind of the hard light in the background kind of casting that shadow and giving it a bright spot. So there's lots of ways to light. If you're looking for lighting solutions or lighting options, YouTube is probably your best friend. We do have a TechSmith Academy course about lighting, about 3 simple kind of 3-point lighting, very simple, very straightforward, that you might want to check out. But it's definitely, go check out different options. And speaking of 3-point lighting, actually, before we talk about 3-point lighting, let me just show you. This is an example video of some different lighting. This is another TechSmith Academy video that shows a little bit more dramatic kind of view of lighting. So let's take a look. Oh, I don't know what's happening here. It looks like it didn't want to play. Let's try it again. There we go.
Dr. Shortcut, we meet again. Your shoddy video has cost this company.
You have no business talking to me about cost. You spend most of your time doodling on that sketch pad of yours. I'm surprised you get anything done on company time.
My storyboards, although they take time, create a fuller and richer video that meets all its goals.
Seems a bit overstated if you ask me.
So a couple things I want to point out as we go here. So first of all, we've got you can actually see the lights in the background, which I think is an interesting decision, but it makes it a lot more dramatic. You can see kind of a harsher light, especially on Doug's face here, but we are lighting him from both sides because he's got the one light behind him, and then you got the right there. He's going to hate me for freezing on that frame, but and then even then you can see here, we come into this part of the video and it's me as the host is a lot more evenly lit. So again, just some options, but lighting can dramatically tell a different story for your audience, depending on what you're going to do. Now let's take a look. We'll go through the end here. We've got the actual kind of the beginning of that noir video, the kind of the Twilight Zone.
You're creating videos of sight and sound, but also mind and body. A journey to a land where the only boundary is your imagination. But things can and do go wrong. You're witnessing one of them.
Whatever you think about scripts and writing. Okay, third one here. This is before we ever made any TechSmith Academy videos, one of the things we had to do was I had to make a proof of concept. And we just went out with an iPhone. We didn't have a microphone. We didn't have a fancy camera. We didn't have anyone to help us. We just said, let's make a proof of concept video. And to show the idea, like to basically sell it internally. And this is that video. And you can see when we go back to it, you're going to see the lighting looks bad. Everything about it is kind of just bad. But here's the thing about any video creation that you can do. You have to know your audience and you know your purpose. I could have spent days and weeks making a really great video that would be proud of in the Academy. That's not what I needed. I needed a proof of concept. I just needed something that was good enough to get the ideas across so we could refine it and we could take it to our senior leadership team and say, like, this is the idea of like what we want to do, except for times like 8 or 9 videos times 50 videos or whatever. So let's take a quick look at it again and you can see what I mean. Again, not meant to be good. Let's get a couple things out of the way. Again, it just does not look good, right? It is not looking good. So just a few ideas about lighting. Again, I want to get a little bit more about lighting, then we'll get to your guys' questions here. We'll interrupt for those, but just keep looking at it. So keep working on it. You're going to get better. So 3-point lighting is one of the basic keys here. Make sure you learn about it. It's the basic. I actually am doing something a little bit different. I'm doing a 2-point lighting setup because I have 2 lights. However, now with the addition of the lights behind me, I sort of do get a third kind of light kind of setting me apart from the wall. But 3-point lighting is pretty simple, actually. There's a lot of great videos. Academy, again, has it. It's something like this kind of setup where your camera, you got your subject here, and you've got a key light and a fill light and a backlight. And that's all you need. And even some cases, you don't need the backlight, depending on your setup and what you're trying to do. If you're doing green screen, you need probably more lights, but your key light is kind of the main one. Fill in is get rid of some of the shadow. Backlight's going to, again, give you separation from whatever's behind you. So that's a high level overview. I don't mean to get into how to do all the lighting, but it's definitely something. Go learn about lighting. It will make a big difference in your video. I can't emphasize that enough. It is really, really worth it. So let's do this for a second. Let's take a pause here. Get back here. Yep. Okay. I want to make sure I go through some of the questions. Paul says, so I do that, talking about framing screencasts. Okay. He says, I tend to zoom into the area and it takes the viewer all across the screen. Is it better to zoom and pull that to the center? So rather than like feeling like you're pushing them around, is it better to move it? I think it depends. Paul, this is a really good question. I think, one, you're trying to avoid making people seasick. So if you feel like it's moving too much and you're going, whoa, that's never good. But I think what you want to make sure too is that they can follow you. So if you're up in say the upper left-hand corner, and then you need to move over to the lower right-hand corner, you have to decide, like, you're just going to zoom through that, or you're going to pull out and give context of where you're going to go. And I don't think there's a wrong way. I think kind of key principles here are avoid motion, like overdoing the motion. Some motion is inevitable. You want some motion. Don't make people seasick. I think you want to make sure that you're not zoomed in so tightly that they have no context around them. I think whether you pull them to the center or you're kind of pushing around, I think it just depends on how you go about building your screencast. Because sometimes if I got something, again, up in a corner, it might not make sense to bring it into the middle and show maybe nothing, kind of nothing around it. That depends on your screen, right? Like if I've got a big screen here, I can have kind of that backdrop, my recording area that maybe I'm recording, I don't know, how to do something in PowerPoint. I can have that extra padding around it that's just kind of desktop background. But if you're working on a 1080p screen and, you might not have those same options. So it's some of that's preference, some of that's style. But what you want to make sure, again, you want to make sure people don't get lost in the context of like, where am I? What am I looking at now? How did I get from here to down here? And that can make a big difference. So again, not wrong or right way, but do limit kind of the speed, the motion, like how much you're getting jarred around. I personally do like kind of pulling out and pushing back in if you can do that smoothly. Again, not every situation works for that, but that's probably a good one. So I hope that helps. Let me know in the comments and ask for follow-up questions. So I guess, let's see, this says, comment, my lights are a little distracting. Can you talk a little about background distractions? Well, the question is, are they still distracting? Because I can change it. We can just go without the movement. I actually think it's not too bad, but that's my opinion. You guys are the judge of watching this. You get to tell me. So distractions, it depends. I've been out we'll call it out in the wild, when you're out on a set shooting. It's not real set, but like out in the wilderness or out on like one time we shot a commercial for one of our products, and we were out on a running path because it's a sports app called Coach's Eye. And, we had cars going by. Were those distracting? Maybe. You have to pick what is and isn't going to work. Other distractions might not be so visual. They might be auditory distractions. But for visual distractions, it just depends. It depends. Does it make sense? Is there context for what needs to be there? If you're shooting a scene that's, talking about, I don't know, something in a workplace and there's no workplace kind of activity, it might look a little flat, might not feel alive. And so you'll have to really think about that, determine what needs to be there, and really be conscious about it. If it doesn't need to be there, you probably should get rid of it, unless it's serving a purpose. So with that said, you know what we're going to do? Because we're going to take this and we are going to just change what we get here. There we go. So now hopefully less distracting. So those are some of the distraction stuff. So, I saw another question about, someone said that Paul, I think, said so bad at scripting. Scripting is always tough, Paul. It's such a key thing. And so we got a TechSmith Academy course. I also recommend, as part of the Visual Lounge, we do another series here called Workflow, where Justin Simon and Andy Owens and I talk about different things. We've talked about scripting for that, as well as on the Visual Lounge. Past episodes have been about scripting, so hopefully those will help you get through some of the things that you need to get going. And it's practice. It's go read a lot. Go look at other people's scripts. Ask to see, like, hey, how do you ask people how they're doing it? But typically, depending on what you're doing, like, you can come up with a formula that can work. Like, hey, I'm going to do an introduction. I'm going to say these things. I'm going to introduce topic 1, 2, 2, 2. It kind of just depends on what type of video you're making as well. And there's lots of different script types. I've written scripts that look like they were written for Hollywood, and I've written scripts that were definitely technical in nature in terms of for training videos. And the ones that are much more elaborate, unless you have something that really needs that treatment, and meaning it's going to be really elaborate type setup, you got to just be careful, because you don't need to do all the extra work. All right, let's keep moving because we still have a couple more to get through. So I'm curious for all you all that are watching, if you're listening to this, I'd love to know in the comments or on Twitter or wherever you might be, what's your biggest challenge with audio? I've talked a lot about audio already, just choosing the right mic is a challenge, but what are some of the challenges that you have with audio? All right, first one, just ignoring the importance. Audio is such a big part of any video. It's at least half your video, unless you're just doing like a video with just music or something like that. The things that are being said are super important, and I'd highly recommend that you find a way to not ignore your audio. Make sure your audio, you're investing in the right setup. I've often said on this program and many other places that when you're going to invest in your video gear, the first place to invest is audio. It is not lighting and camera. And so you want to make sure you're not just ignoring the audio, and that might be, your microphone. But in addition to that, it might be things like background noise or room noise. Do you have a fan going or your HVAC, your heater or cooler? What is it? What's in the environment? So just another quick story here. And I've been on a lot of places where the environment was not good for recording. When the video where we shot the lake scene of the video that I showed earlier in this program, the place we were recording was a lake, and it was a terrible time to do it, and everyone was fine. It was like early November though. It was super cold. But just off the shore of the lake, there was a house and there was a cement truck. While we were trying to film those scenes, and we thought, oh my gosh, what are we gonna do? This is the day we got scheduled to do this. A cement truck is extremely noisy, and so we had a couple options. We could reschedule, which wasn't going to be great for times and effort. We could ignore it and just hope it worked out, or we could wait to stop. And we had no idea when it was going to stop. So you just sometimes you have to make do with the situation you're dealt. But if you got a cement truck and it's got noise, you got to be aware of those things so that you're not going to have problems as you're watching going back to do this video. Other things that you might want to watch for, is your microphone placed in a good position? I've had lapel microphones that were not placed well, or I was turning my head a lot, and what that was causing was the microphone not to do its job very well, because if the microphone's over here and I'm facing the other way, problem is it's not going to pick up very well. So be aware of that, your microphone quality. If you're putting in music in, I've got I've made all these mistakes. That's why I'm able to share them with you. I did a video recently, and I thought, what would be really nice under here is a music bed. It's a longer video. It's going to help things move along, and I feel like it's going to give it some energy. And I listened to it, and I thought, oh yeah, this sounds really good. I think the mix is really good. Well, it wasn't. And I got a lot of feedback, a lot of negative feedback telling me that the audio mix wasn't good. So what did I have to do for this event? Well, I had to go back and reprocess the video without the music and give it to them so that people could actually hear and really focus. It became a problem. So make sure you're checking these things as you're going, whether it's pre your recording process or during your editing, and even after you produce your thing, make sure, because in this case, the volumes got changed a little bit to different than what I thought it would sound like. And so you want to be aware of that. A couple other things. We've talked about noise, but think about things like echo. Echo! I don't know if you can hear it. My microphone should take care of some of that. But if you got echo in a room, like if you've ever been in a tiled room and you've recorded something, not going to sound good. Make sure your microphone volume, even if you're doing a screencast, you can adjust how much the input is. Now, I've got a mixer. I'm not going to play with it right now, but I can move that up and down to change those levels. So you want to play with that. Make sure you're getting enough volume or not too much volume. And then if you're in the editing process and you are doing like a noise reduction process, cleaning up the audio, you can clean it up too much, and it's going to make it sound like almost like you're in a tin can or underwater or something like that. And that is no good. It just doesn't sound good. It sounds like you've over-processed it, and everyone can hear that. So just be aware of those things so that you can make sure you're not, things to watch for, right? Just whatever your environment, both recording and elsewise. So, all right, let me go back to my slides here. So we've talked about room sound. We've talked about microphone a little bit. We talked about music a little bit with my story. But the other thing about music, feeling a little scared right now. I don't know about, music sets the tone a lot of times for videos. And you may or may not hear it, but it is serious. It is important. Wrong music will cause all sorts of problems. If you want a tense music, this is great. You want kind of scary music, this is great. But if you're going for a happy-go-lucky sound, this is not it. So pay attention to the music you've got in your video, right? Let's go on to number 6, because we're getting close on time and I want to make sure we get through at least 7 of them, because I'll hear about it if we don't. Number 6 is not keeping things moving. Let's talk about this for a second, because this is something I think it's another one of those things that's a little subjective. And that's okay. Like I said at the beginning of this, 7 sins, like some of these are a little subjective, but I think there's things that happen to a lot of people. Like a lot of us will probably just shoot a video that is someone talking into the camera the entire time. I could have done that today. I did not have to bring up slides, and I thought about it. Maybe I don't want to bring up slides. Maybe I don't want video. But to me, at least, I feel like at least this gives us some variety, something else to look at. It's not just like, I mean, guys, if you're watching this every week or listening to me every week, an hour, I thank you for being that dedicated, right? Like, but keeping things moving is really important because it's going to draw attention. As things change on the screen, it's going to help draw focus, right? Like, I get it. You might be doing a lot of other things when you're listening to videos, but the motion is going to draw you, and our brains are wired for that motion. And so this is just a little thing to help you to keep things moving. One of the things you can do in that is to be thinking about B-roll. B-roll, if you're not familiar with the term, is think about your main footage, like me talking to you would be A-roll. And I could, that's a main footage, right? And the B is secondary footage. So I could put something like when I go to my slides here, that's like a secondary footage. And it allows to kind of show other things. So in films and TV shows, classic B-roll might be is you're getting introduced to a character, but you just are going down the street, driving down the street, and you see just kind of the street pulling up to their house. That's not really a main person focus, but it is helping to establish where you are, what time of day it is. It might be helping to establish other things. So like when I show, like if I were to take my phone and show you things on my phone, I could make B-roll that's me clicking on my phone. It could be screen video showing the tapping on the phone. You can use B-roll to help in a lot of different ways. Not only does it keep things moving, keep things interesting, it's a great way to cover up mistakes. And if you've got B-roll and you made a mistake and you need to put 2 clips together that are taken at a different time, like maybe I record this now, maybe I have to say it again. B-roll can cover up that cut so you don't really know that it's a different take. You just see like, oh, there's Matt, there's some footage, and then there's this next thing. So I like keeping things moving. I think it's really, really important. But like most of this that I'm saying, be deliberate in your process. Be deliberate in adding that. Don't just add it because you can. Add it because it's going to add value. It's going to increase understanding. It's going to help to move your message forward. But don't just, if you're just covering mistakes, it's probably not best practice. So Jesse, it's got another question for me. Any suggestions for sourcing music, sound effects, and B-roll? And absolutely, we have some great resources here. First and foremost, if you are a Camtasia user, you're editing in Camtasia, you've got assets for Camtasia. That is a library of these things. B-roll footage, you got like different footage, you got different music and sound effects. I actually pull a number of my things from there. If you're looking for other places, there's tons of other places. Most of them have some type of charge because that's how they're making their money, which is fair. The one for TechSmith does have a charge to it as well. It's a yearly fee, but you get everything once you get it. But there's lots of great sites out there that have lots of things. Be mindful. I know a lot of people are very tempted just to pull stuff off like, oh, I saw it on the internet, I can use that. Not the way it works. Be mindful, copyright, please. But that's the nice thing about a lot of these libraries like TechSmith or Camtasia assets, TechSmith assets for Camtasia. It's going to be royalty free and allow you to use it in any of your projects. And you just missed out on an opportunity to win 6 months last week when we did our contest, which hopefully we'll do again sometime. Okay, so let's keep going here. So we're keeping things moving. Number 7, the last one. Not shooting and editing with the end in mind. this one might seem a little bit confusing at first. Like, what does that mean? I think for a lot of us, we just start making video. We're just like, oh, I'm going to shoot the video. Just start filming stuff, right? That's what you do. But that's not really best practice. It can work in sometimes. Sometimes you're really lucky and you catch stuff. But you want to think about, what is the end destination here? What should this video look like? What should be there? And this is why we're big advocates of planning, whether that's your scripting or storyboarding or just an outline to help you. So that way, when you are going through all of this process, you're not just going to end up with a bunch of random stuff. You know exactly what you're going to need. And that way, if you're shooting, let's say, someplace outside of your business, you make sure you walk away from there having everything you need, because it's hard. It really is hard to go back, not only from a permission standpoint, but timing standpoint. And it will never, and I can't emphasize this enough, it will never look exactly the same. Something will have changed. The lighting will change. Knowing my luck, they will put something up that changes the inside space dramatically. So it's like, oh no, it doesn't. That poster wasn't there before. We can't take that poster down. They glued it. Whatever it might be. So you want to be thinking about the end state. What is it? What should it look like? And do that in shooting, but also while you're editing, because that's going to give you permission to cut things out, to get rid of stuff that you don't need, and remove the pieces that are like, oh gosh, this isn't really helping me to accomplish X goal. So if it's a learning training video, right? You're making something to teach people. Oftentimes our inclination is to add too much. We just want to add too much. And so this gives you permission to go through and say, get rid of it, right? Get rid of that thing that you don't need. Okay, so let me see here. Just looking through my notes real quick, make sure I'm not missing anything else. I hope that makes sense about the shooting with and editing with end in mind. I think that happens. I did it a lot as a new video creator. I just kind of got lost, and I wanted to do cool things. We want to do cool things with our videos. However, keeping things consistent, keeping them, focused on that goal. Like I want to increase our company's revenue. I want to inform them of this new feature. I want to help them understand X, Y, and Z is really, really important. So, all right. I just want to see if there are any other questions. We can take those. Happy to dig into those things that you might want. But it looks like there's been some great conversations in the chat. Always appreciate everyone tuning in. So let me just give you guys, I know there's a little bit of delay here, so that's why I paused a little bit, just to make sure that you guys get a chance. So we got a comment. Yvonne, even in my written handouts, I always summarize and have an ending for the lesson just covered. Also do this in my video. Yvonne, I think that can work really well. I think there's probably some preference there, but I know in the other part of the visual lounge that we do that's not live with Andy and Justin and myself, I mentioned it earlier, it's usually about video workflow content. I really like having them just do a quick last take, right? It's usually a summary statement, something meant to be quick, or just that last thing they didn't get into there. But I think it can be really valuable, because depending on how long your video is, it could be a lot to take in. And usually, again, our video should be focused on one idea. So if we're not trying to put 5 different points out there or 10 different points, we really want to focus our videos on one thing. So in this case, it's the 7 things that 7 mistakes, right? People make. Even though 7 distinct ideas, it's really focused on that one big idea of those 7 things. And so what mistakes do people typically make? And so, if I was going to summarize, I'd go through and read these again, which is a little easier said than done with the way my notes are set up. But sure, we could do that right now, right? I could say, number 1, not getting to know what your equipment can do. Number 2, thinking you'll fix it in post. Number 3, failing to frame your videos. Number 4, not lighting your videos. Number 5, ignoring the importance of audio. And that was a big one. There's lots there. Number 6, not keeping things moving. And number 7, not shooting and editing with the end in mind. So there we go. Summaries are good, right? All right. I see. I'm going to move over to chat, Jesse, just so so I got a question. What best video editor than Camtasia? I'm going to be completely honest with you. I primarily use Camtasia. I think there are a lot of good video editors out there, and I don't mean this as a cop-out. I think the best video editor is the one you know how to use. And if that's Premiere, or if that's Adobe Rush, or if that's Camtasia, or if that's a bazillion of the other ones that are available to you, if you've got a video editor that's on a mobile device and that's the one that you know how to use and you can make it work, that is literally the best one. The problem that I think a lot of people get into is there's really great options, but they're also very complicated. And if you're using a video editor that's, you feel like, this is too complicated, and you're avoiding editing, that's a problem. So, could I talk about some of the video editors? Yes, I could probably tell you some of the cool things about them. A lot of them have very cool things. Use the right video editor for the right job, and you'll always be happy. So, all right. Well, let's me do this. I'm gonna end this portion. So, I want to still take some questions, but from a Visual Lounge standpoint, that's the show today. Thank you so much for tuning in. If you like what you're seeing, make sure you hit like or subscribe. Give us feedback, comments wherever you're watching or listening to this. We really appreciate it. We're gonna take a little time. If you're into the video stuff, we're gonna watch. We're gonna listen. Answer some questions. If you're listening to podcasts, thank you so much. We really appreciate everybody for tuning in. Thank you. Okay, so that gives me a little bit of hard cut, but I'll stay live for a few minutes because I see a couple other questions, and we haven't gone long for a while. So if you got questions, I'll stick around, because you know what? I've been on vacation, so I'm just back, so I'm excited and refreshed, and I got vacation tomorrow. So last week I said I don't take vacation on live stream days because I like being here with you guys. And Right Price Real Estate Group, and I almost read that as Price is Right Real Estate Group, and I apologize, but getting those words mixed around in my head. What are the strengths of Nomia versus Snagit versus Screencasts versus Camtasia? That would help decide what products are needed and what specific problems they were designed to solve. It's a great question because we do know we've got some different products here. I think think about levels here of kind of what you want to do and a little bit different focus. Let's start with Snagit, for instance. Snagit is primarily a screen capture tool. It will do lightweight video editing, like lightweight video capture, screen capture. But its bread and butter is capturing still images. It's actually pretty good. If I want to make a quick 5-minute or less, really just short, I'm not going to edit much. I just got to trim maybe the beginning, end, and maybe if I make a mistake, take it out. I love using Snagit. I use Snagit to create my PowerPoint slides, like adjust the images. I add it. I do screenshots all the time. So that's what Snagit's really, really good at. It's a daily tool for me. It's a workplace communication tool. I'm using it to put pictures into Slack. I'm using it to make in my emails. I'm using it all the time because it's always on, it's always quick, it's always ready. Camtasia, on the other hand, for instance, is when I want to make something that's more polished, a longer video that I'm going to edit. Like this video, if I was going to edit this up into small chunks, I would use Camtasia. If I want to annotate, I want to add some effects, I want to add some flair to it, I'm going into Camtasia. In fact, any video nowadays, I'm taking into Camtasia. I also will use it to record longer videos. If it's anything more than a couple minutes, I'm not messing with Snagit for that. I'm going to use Camtasia. It's a great screen recorder. It also, like I said, I use it for my camera video stuff as well. So kind of big fundamental differences there. Video editor versus screen capture tool, although it has a little bit of lightweight video editing. Now, Screencast.com is completely different. It is a hosting service. It is a place where you can put your videos at, right? Like, so Camtasia, put your videos there. You want to put some images there, you can put Snagit images there. I use it, it's super easy to just share to that. And then instead of like dragging and, putting a whole big image that might be megabytes big or a video file that might be even bigger, what I'll do is I'll just upload it to Screencast, get the URL, drop it into Slack or wherever, and it makes my life just super easy. It makes everyone else's life easier because I'm not plugging up their email with giant pictures and images. So that's Screencast. Nomia is a little bit different still. Nomia Pro is the tool that you can go out and get. It's got some of that hosting, but think of it maybe as a little bit more of a library feature, a little bit more advanced than what Screencast is. It's also got some tools to help you, very super lightweight capture tool, even less than what Snagit has. And it's kind of like, think about Jing. If you remember Jing, it's a lightweight capture tool that TechSmith made. We've replaced it with a tool called Capture. Basically, it's a way to just say like, oh gosh, I just need something real quick. But you've got some different features and functionality in there. It's a little bit more enhanced than Screencast Nomia Pro. So I hope that helps. Would love to hear if that did or not. So Guys, this is awesome. I see some conversation going on. It's super awesome to have you all talking in the chat. So let me know if there's any other questions. We're going to pass on, just based on time, what's new at TechSmith this week. Go check out the blog, of course. Always happy to do that. Right Price Real Estate says I have Camtasia and Snagit. Hopefully those are working well for you. Hopefully you're finding those everyday kind of purposes. And I'll be honest, I don't use Camtasia every day. I use it frequently, but my job, that's part of my job. But I do use Snagit every day. And if anyone's on this, watching this or listening, who has not tried Snagit, go try it. It is amazing. It's an amazing tool, and it's relatively inexpensive for the license. But again, it's something I use every single day. Cool. Okay. Let me just see if there's anything else. All right. Well, I think with that said, unless you guys have some last minute hard-hitting questions, I want to thank you all for tuning in, and let me know, what would you like to see us talk about in the future? We've got some great guests coming up. I've been planning out for the next 10 weeks. We've got some fantastic people coming on the show. We're gonna interview. We'll just drop some names. Why not? We got Tim Schmoyer. If you don't know him, go check him out. Awesome guy that has got like 1 million YouTube subscribers. We've got from our own customer education team, Doug Brunner. He's the manager of that customer education team. He's got some fantastic thoughts. We've got, a little guy named Owen Video. Go check out his stuff as well on YouTube. We've got maybe some other stuff that I can't talk about yet. We've got some other tech smithies coming on. We've got some other customer education people, but we want to know what it is that you want to hear about. So with that said, I think that's about it. So thanks, everybody. We hope you have a great day, and I will see you next week in the Visual Lounge. Take care, everybody.